I think that the Astros will hire a general manager by spring training. Only time will tell. We don't know. We don't know that to be true. And this current power structure concerns me if it carries on long term. I'm not worried about it at all short term. I would be worried about it long term. Now, one thing that, like, the Astros have signed 2 free agents. They've signed Rafael Montero, one of their own. They've signed Jose Abreu. Jim Crane said yesterday at the press conference they're still in on Verlander. They're still in on Yuli. They've talked to Yuli's agent. He also said that there's other needs, catcher, outfielder. You can never have enough pitching. So the Astros are going to be players in free agency. Something that you normally see over the winter, hot stove of Major League Baseball offseason, is the trade market. The trade market is always something. Now, we haven't seen many trades. If really, we've seen a bunch of minor trades, and that's it. But right now with the Astros, without a general manager, do you envision the Astros being involved at all in the trade market between now and the time they get a GM?
I don't, because of the fact, and I hope that they don't, because I think that you need to have the right people in place in order to take that to the next level. And sometimes that involves analytics in terms of, you know better than anybody. And when you start analyzing a player and you start trying to figure out and calculate are they on the downside? Are they on the decline? Where are they in terms of not just what number represents their age, but performance based on year to years, and factoring that stuff in, as well as contract, because you don't want to get handcuffed by a contract that you take on for too many years at too many dollars. So I don't foresee them, because they don't have many needs. We know that. They basically are returning now a bullpen intact that was the best bullpen in baseball. That we know that whether Verlander comes back or not, that you've got at least 6 quality starters to keep doing what you were doing and have been doing with quality starting pitching. And from a lineup perspective, you continue to address, and Crane, as you said, also indicated the ones that they haven't addressed yet, they still plan to where you don't have to do much in terms of a trade. But if someone knocks your socks off and comes at you and says, hey, I know you got a surplus of starting pitching, I've got a couple of bats that could really interest you. We're trying to turn the page and go younger, whereas I've got a couple of veterans that could really do you some good. I don't think you turn a deaf ear to it and say, I'm not listening. But you damn well hope that there's the right people involved in the conversation so that they can either talk you down from the ledge or say, hey, this is something worth exploring.
Yeah. See, I don't want them to make a trade either. While between this period of time, and we don't know how long the period's going to be, but this time that they don't have a general manager, I don't want them to make a trade. Why I'm okay with this current regime is because I think everything doesn't have long-lasting impact. Abreu for 3 years doesn't influence your minor league system at all. It didn't cost you a pick because he didn't have a qualifying offer. Same thing with Rafael Montero. It has 0 long-term ramifications. A trade could potentially have long-term ramifications, and any sort of move that has long-term ramifications, I need a real general manager, not Jeff Bagwell. And as much as I like Bill Ferkus, especially if he connects with me on LinkedIn, I don't want them making those trades. Like, look, I think that the Astros at some point are going to have to trade one of their catchers, especially if they sign a catcher, whether it's Jainer Diaz or Corey Lee. I want a real-life general manager who's capable of knowing their minor league system, knowing their players, but then also everybody else's minor league system.
Yep.
Like, Jeff Bagwell doesn't know who the Pittsburgh Pirates, whatever is. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't know who's playing center field in Kansas City. And I need a GM, if they're making trades that could potentially trade a Corey Lee, a Jainer Diaz, who had 6 years of club control for a splash of a center fielder or something like that. I need somebody who understands trade market, not only for the Astros, but across Major League Baseball.
You got to be able to make projections too, right? You got to see the short term of the window's still open for us to be competitive, to compete for a World Series for at least this many years. But I don't want to be so narrow-minded that I don't also keep an eye on the fact that I've got to bring these prospects along. I've got to keep them as close to the major league level and or getting, taste of Major League Baseball, because I got to have them ready. And at a certain point, I got to know when they're going to take over. And to your point, like, again, I use my experiences, but when you went into the basketball operations staff under Darryl and the guys that he had under him, the one whiteboard was completely filled with everyone else's roster, everyone else's minor league system, or their G League in this case, and then their draft picks, so that you could constantly keep an eye on and say, hey, if we need a player that plays this position, here are the people on the other teams that we've identified that would be good fits for our squad that don't have really debilitating contracts, that could be a guy that we could get and probably not have to give up too much, or we would have something that they'd want. So that's also another very, very, it's an idiosyncrasy of what's going on the big picture level of a general manager, but it's hyper important to the day-to-day and then also the future projections for your squad.
Yeah, I don't want them to make a trade if they don't have a current general manager. What do you say? 713-780-3776, our HRMP listener line. Agree on that HRMP listener line. By the time the Astros hire a GM, he won't have much to do. For this offseason, he won't. The job will be done for the 2023 Houston Astros, at least carrying him to opening day. But the GM position's about long term. The GM that the Houston Astros hired, Jim Crane's hiring that guy to build the Astros from the moment he's hired for the next 20 years. Like, that's what the general manager's doing. That's why Crane's not in a hurry. That's why Crane doesn't care to do it on November 30th, and he's fine taking it up to spring training. He wants to take his time. He wants to make sure that he hires the right dude. 4488, if Crane is going to hire a GM before spring training, did Crane limit his chances with the comment that he's going to try to hire somebody before spring training? Does that take the Baltimore Orioles GM off the table? Look, I don't think he was ever hiring the GM, Mike Elias, who was here under Luno, who was the current general manager at Baltimore. I don't think Elias would have left Baltimore as the GM for the move to the Astros to be the GM. Maybe you're talking about Sig Mejdal, who's the assistant general manager in Baltimore, who's a former NASA scientist that played blackjack professionally for a long period of time. That was here with the Astros under Jeff Luno as well. I feel like the general manager carousel in Major League Baseball, it is what it is. Like, there's not currently any general manager jobs that are open right now. No one's going to get fired between now and when the Astros hire somebody, if they do, ahead of spring training. I don't think the market has changed at all based on the last time a GM was hired, based on what Jim Crane had to say. The market just isn't going to change between now and when the Astros eventually hire a GM.
Hey guys, back to the video in just 1 minute. Before that, I want to tell you about Fitz Roofing. If you got a leaky roof or need a full roof replacement on your business or your home, or you want to get something done around the yard or maybe something around the house, they have the best warranties in the business, the best ratings, and the best service. They're going to take care of you every step of the way. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time. It's not, but the thing that's intriguing to me that kind of contradicts what you thought and then also what you said that Crane said is, at the end of the day, we do know that the David Stern situation is interesting because of the fact he's got to live out his contract for one more season with Milwaukee, then he becomes available. So does Jim Crane make this makeshift work for one? Because there's not a whole lot to do right now, but if he feels like there's not a whole lot to do for the rest of this season as we enter into the actual spring training and the regular season, does he say, hey, we can makeshift this for one season and then go get the guy that will be the ultimate kingpin of all we do baseball operations for the long term in a guy like Stearns? Or like you said, do we keep an eye on the other guys that we know have Luno connections or kind of have the best case scenario for who we might need and then determine at what point do we have to go get them, or can we wait until this point to try and intrigue them?
I think there's two scenarios with the David Stearns factor. One, you hire a general manager that is fine. He's a good general manager, but up and coming, doesn't need power, all of that. Then you hire David Stearns as president of baseball operations. Or what I probably think is the more likely scenario, that ship has sailed and David Stearns is not going to be employed by the Houston Astros in a year.
Because I think the other thing that I brought up to you was maybe you hire a disciple of Stearns as your general manager this year, knowing full well that in a year's time, Stearns comes in, he has a relationship with the guy understands, I'm going to do the day-to-day, Stearns is going to be the final stamp of approval that talks to Crane, and then you also get the other guys that factor in, and you can create that system. It just takes a year to all take shape.
Yeah, I think it's plausible. I think it's more likely that Stearns might not be a Houston Astro.